Hello, Demetria Miles-McDonald here. I'm the founder and CEO of Decide Diversity and the creator of the Table of Diversity. The question that I'm going to answer today, when did I create the Table of Diversity? Back in 2015, as I was trying to really understand and create a tool that helped me describe intersectionality, I created the Table of Diversity. And as I was kind of thinking through what this looked like, I actually remembered my experience in undergrad. I majored in chemistry for 2.5 years before changing my major. And I recall my professors and instructors, taking us on a journey through chemistry. And you probably remember this too. The first couple of classes or even weeks into your course, you're learning about the basics. You're learning about the periodic table of elements, you're learning about gases, you're learning about all of those different things. And you might learn about those individual elements on the table of diversity. And so, I'm sorry, on the periodic table of elements. And I then started thinking about the more advanced classes where you'd learn about compounds, how hydrogen and oxygen come together to create a brand new molecule or compound like H2O or H2O2. And so I started thinking, wow, that would be a really great way to talk about diversity. You know, we have to know and understand those individual diversity elements, but we also can't just stop there. I mean, we got to keep going in our diversity journey. We have to learn about the compounds. We have to learn about the intersections of how race and gender come together to create, a brand new compound, a brand new experience. We have to understand that too. And so I thought this would be a great way to talk about diversity. And everyone has taken a chemistry class. Even if you took it, decades ago, you still kind of remember the principle, you remember the concept. So I thought this was it. And as I started putting it together, first I just kind of drew it out, and then I got on my computer and got in Photoshop and started putting it together. And then, those voices just started coming into my head, and I was telling myself, like, this is kind of childish. Like, only kids, would see this and think that it was fun. Like, there's no way that adults are going to find value in this tool. And so I created it and put it on a folder on my desktop and just kind of left it there. I mean, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't show anyone. I didn't do anything because I was like, this doesn't exist in the marketplace already. So that means someone must have tried it and it failed miserably. And I was like, I don't even want to put myself through that shame and embarrassment. So I just kind of put it to the side. And I was getting really, really frustrated with how people were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, how people were operationalizing it. And I did not feel like it was living up to its potential. And so I was like, I got to do something. Like, I feel like I'm the one who's supposed to bring a different thought process to this work. And so I went to a good friend and was like, I'm just frustrated. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. And somewhere along in the conversation, I mentioned the table of diversity. And my friend was like, well, show it to me. Like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean by table of diversity. Like, you said it, but I'm not getting a visual here. So I showed it to her. And she was like, Demetria, like, what is wrong with you? Like, show people this, like, stop hiding it. And I finally built up, I don't know if it's the courage or the insanity. I feel like sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to have a little bit of both. You have to have courage to do the things that, you envision and dream of, but you also have to be a little bit insane because you're like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Who knows, but we'll do it anyway. And so I ended up speaking at a DEI conference. I was going to deliver a presentation, and at this conference were students, because it was at a college, so there were going to be students, professors. There were people from the community who were also invited, so there were going to be DEI leaders, like managers, directors, chief diversity officers. There were going to be folks in HR, invested community members. I mean, it was going to be a mixture of everyone who I could eventually be in contact with throughout my career as a DEI practitioner. They were going to be at this conference. And so I said to myself, this is it. Like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to unveil the table of diversity, and the folks in the room are going to let me know whether it is something that I can continue talking about, or if I need to like put it back on a shelf and let it collect dust. And so I remember presenting at this conference. The day arrived and I'm like sweating bullets because I know what's about to happen. And I'm standing up in front of the room, full of people. And there were people that I wanted to work with them. Like, there were people that I admired in this work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to be insane to do this right now. Like, why wouldn't I choose a less, threatening opportunity to unveil this tool? But I was like, okay, I've already submitted my presentation. It's in the works. I can't stop it now. So I start, and I'm going through my slides. And then I know the next slide is the table of diversity. And I pull it up on screen. And I just pause, because I want to see the reactions of everyone in the room before I go forward. So I pause and I'm looking around. And no one is really saying anything with their face. I mean, they're pretty just blank. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does the blankness mean? And so I'm still paused, and I see people in the back of the room kind of start to stand up, and they're moving a little bit closer to the front of the room. And people who are kind of in the front of the room start to lean forward. And then I see that they're zoned in, they're focused on the table of diversity. And then I start talking about it and describing it and describing what it is and why I created it and how I created it and what I was hoping to achieve because of it. And I had more slides after that I wanted to get to, but the conversations that we were able to have just on that slide filled up the rest of the time that we were together. Like, I didn't even make it through the rest of my presentation. And surprisingly, folks were like, okay, so how can I get my copy? Like, how can I take this back to my organization? What else can I do with it? What activities, what conversations, what discussions, what transformation can I facilitate using this tool? And I haven't even thought about that. Like, what do you mean you want to get your copy? I mean, I had no clue. That wasn't something that I had anticipated. And so, after that presentation was over, I was like, whoa, people want a copy of it to take back to their company and talk about it. And I was like, this is kind of outside of what I imagined. And okay, I might have something. And from there, it's taken off, and has grown so much bigger than what I anticipated, and had a much bigger impact than I originally planned for. But yeah, that's when I created the Table of Diversity back in 2015. The conference didn't happen until 2017. So I went about 2 years before even talking about and bringing the Table of Diversity out into the open. And that 2 years, like, I didn't create it in a day. So some of that 2 years was me doing the research behind the Table of Diversity, sketching it out, and then really bringing it to its final form. And I'd say that took about 6 months. And so the rest of that time was me just having that imposter syndrome kick in, that caused me to not tell anyone about it until I was to a point where I was so frustrated with how people were talking about, diversity, that I was like, okay, I got to do something. And that's when the Table of Diversity made its grand appearance. So if you want your copy of the Table of Diversity, go to tableofdiversity.com. You can get it for free. And then come back here and join me so that we can continue breaking down the Table of Diversity, continue talking about it. I can share some behind the scenes information, do some activities with the Table of Diversity. Again, my name is Demetria Miles-McDonald. I'm the founder and CEO of Decide Diversity and the creator of the Table of Diversity. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.